The map shows 2 trails. That night there were 3. I've worked search and rescue in the Cascades for 12 years, and in those 12 years, I learned one thing they don't put in any manual. The mountains aren't cruel. The mountains just don't care. They're not hunting you. They don't wish you harm. You simply walk into a place that was never meant for people, and the mountains go on being what they are: cold, high, indifferent. The mountains aren't cruel. The mountains just don't care. Most of the people we lose die because of that indifference. They expect nature to be kind to them. It isn't kind. It just is. I've pulled people off cliffs, dragged them out of rivers so cold their fingers had stopped working, dug them out of snowbanks. The ones who gave up sat down in the snow and decided they'd just rest for a little while. I've seen things that made the young guys on my team quit within a month. I didn't quit. I thought I'd seen all of it. But I only ever walked away once. And it wasn't because of something I saw. It was because of the trails. Every park has them. The official routes. Marked on the maps, blazed with paint on the trees, packed down by thousands of boots. Hikers stay on them because people are wired to walk where others have already walked. It's instinct. Worn ground means safety. And the ones who leave the trail are usually the ones we go out looking for. Sometimes we find them. Sometimes we don't. There's one stretch of forest right up near the ridge, an old part of the park where beginners rarely wander, too high, too far from the parking lot. The map shows 2 trails there, the East Loop and the West Loop. They split at an old wooden sign and meet again 4 miles later, forming a loop. Simple. I'd walked it hundreds of times, in rain, in fog, at night, with a flashlight and without. I knew every root in the ground, every turn. I could have walked that loop with my eyes closed. I'm telling you this so you understand. I am not a man who's afraid of shadows. I knew that place better than my own backyard. The night we lost the Bauer family, there were 3 trails. The call came in at sunset. A father, a mother, 2 kids, a boy around 10, a girl a little younger. They'd set out that afternoon on the East Loop, an easy family route, and by dark they hadn't come back to their car. The one who called us was the father's mother. The grandmother was waiting for her grandkids, with their favorite dinner already on the table. To us, it was a routine call. People tend to panic, to expect the worst. We get calls like this several times a month, and almost always it ends fine. People just lose track of time and walk out on their own while we're still heading up. There were 2 of us. My partner's name was David. We'd worked together 6 years, and I trusted him the way you can only trust a man you've hung off the same rope with over a drop. He was calm, careful, never panicked. So when I tell you that night he was afraid, believe me, that already tells you something. We climbed for about an hour with our flashlights. The forest at night is a different forest. In daylight it's green and alive. At night it turns deep and solid, and your flashlight doesn't so much light the way as carve out a small trembling circle, beyond which there's nothing. By the time we reached the fork, it was full dark. The clouds hung very low. That's when David stopped. Hard. I almost walked into him. Without a word, he pointed his flashlight at the sign. 3 arrows, east, west, and 1 straight ahead. Down a trail I had never seen, not once, in 12 years on that ground. I remember the cold spreading through me, slow, like someone had opened a door onto a winter night. Not fear yet, just wrongness. The way you feel when you come home and realize the furniture's been moved a few inches, even though no one's been there all day. The wood of that 3rd sign was older, like it had always been there. The board was cracked and faded, like it had stood out in the rain and sun for decades. The other 2 signs I'd helped put up myself 4 years ago. Pale wood, not yet darkened. But this one looked like it had always been there, like we were the ones who'd come late, with our new trails. I radioed it in, told dispatch. There's a 3rd route at the fork, not on the map. What are my instructions? Static. Then the dispatcher's voice. Karen, I'd known her 10 years. Say again, you've got 2 trails there, east and west. I said, no, 3. A long pause. There are 2 on the map. I knew there were 2 on the map. I knew the 3rd trail did not exist, and yet there it was in front of me. Packed earth running off into the trees, smooth and dark, like thousands of feet had walked it. Far more worn than the 2 real ones. And then we heard the girl, crying. Thin, a child's crying, broken up, the way you cry when you're already too tired to cry but can't stop. And it was coming from there, from the 3rd trail. The Bowers had a daughter. David looked at me. I looked at him. And we went down the 3rd trail. Forward. He went first. I want that to be clear, not because I'm proud of it, but because it's the one thing I can never change. He walked ahead. I was right behind him, an arm's length back, and the crying kept retreating. A little farther, a little past the next bend. You know how it is with a mosquito in a dark room. You move toward the sound, and it's always just off to the side, like that. We walked fast, almost running, and we never got any closer. Hey, I shouted into the dark. We're search and rescue. Stay where you are. We're coming to you. The crying didn't answer. It just continued, steady, at the same distance. And I should have understood right then. A child who hears rescuers either runs toward them or freezes. A child does not move away from help, deeper into the woods, calmly, without looking back, exactly matching your pace. Even though a grown man, nearly running, moves faster than any child could. The trees were changing. I didn't notice at first. In the dark, everything happens gradually. The pines I knew gave way to something else, older. The trunks grew thicker, the bark darker, and the branches overhead wove together so tightly my flashlight stopped finding the sky. Like we were no longer walking through a forest, but inside something, a corridor, a throat. And it went quiet. It took me a moment to place what was bothering me, and then it hit me. The sounds were gone. A living forest always has a background. Insects, wind in the branches, distant water, the rustle of small animals. It's white noise you stop noticing. And here it was gone. All of it, at once. No wind, no insects. The air had turned thick and motionless, like a sealed cellar. Only our boots on the packed earth and the crying, always ahead. I looked at my watch. We'd been walking the 3rd trail for 20 minutes. 20 minutes straight in. But the whole loop, all 4 miles, took an hour and a half. Where could a straight trail lead? One we'd been walking for 20 minutes without seeing an end or a turn. And then David stopped walking. He didn't slow down. He just froze, mid-step, like he'd hit glass. He was staring down, at the ground, right in front of him, and he wasn't moving. Dave, I said. Dave, what? He didn't answer. He just slowly raised his hand and pointed his flashlight down. And I lowered my beam to where he was looking. Footprints. The ground beneath us was covered in footprints. Not 2 or 3, hundreds, maybe thousands. Prints from boots, sneakers, bare feet, small children's feet, big men's soles, layered over each other, pressed into the earth in strata like tree rings. That's why the trail was so smooth and dark. Thousands of feet really had walked it, and every one of them went the same direction, inward, down the trail, toward where the crying came from. I crouched and ran my light along the ground, both directions, slow, checking, double-checking. I've been reading tracks for 12 years. It's my job. I could not have been wrong. Not one print led back out. Thousands of people walked onto that trail, and not one of them walked back out. I grabbed David's shoulder, hard enough to hurt, and said very quietly and very clearly, the way you talk when you're afraid a loud voice might wake something. We're leaving. Right now. Slowly. Don't run. He nodded. Once. His face was paper white in the flashlight, and his lips were moving, like he was counting something to himself. We turned back to back, shoulder to shoulder, and started walking back, the same trail, the same packed earth. And to keep from losing our minds, to keep from drifting, we started counting our steps out loud, in a whisper. 1, 2, 3. Behind us, the crying changed. It got closer. I didn't turn around. I want you to know this. Whatever you hear in the dark, do not turn around, because to turn is to stop, and to stop is to start deciding whether to go back toward the sound. We didn't stop. We counted our steps out loud so we wouldn't lose our minds. 1, 2, 3. The crying was following us now, right behind us, and it no longer sounded like a child. It had gone lower, wider, like several voices crying at once, layered over each other, and among them I thought I could make out adults. A man. A woman. I stared at David's back and the little circle of light at our feet, and I counted and counted and counted. I felt the cold in my hands, like something cold was trying to take my hand and pull me back. 40. 41. On 43, the forest ahead thinned out. I saw the old wooden sign, ours, the real one, with its pale wood, and I almost screamed with relief. We burst out onto the fork, gasping, and I grabbed the post with my hand, just to feel something solid under my fingers, something real, something ordinary. 43 steps. It had taken us 20 minutes to walk in. We came out onto the fork and turned around. I shone my light on the sign. 2 arrows, east, west. The third trail was gone. Where it had run off into the woods, there were undisturbed pine needles, an even, peaceful layer like no one had set foot there in years. No packed path, no prints, like we'd dreamed all of it, like the forest had closed a door behind us and pretended it had never been there at all. David sat right down on the ground by the post and couldn't speak for a long time. When he could, he said only one thing. He said that the whole way back, all 43 steps, he'd heard the voices behind us calling him by name. I hadn't heard that. I'd only heard the crying. We found the Bauer family the next morning, all 4 of them. They were sitting at the start of the East Trail, 2 miles from that spot, dehydrated, freezing, and confused, but alive. All of them alive. The father said they'd gotten lost in the dark, circled for hours, and then heard us calling them by name, and followed our voices, and the voices led them out to the trail. David and I looked at each other. We never called them by name. We couldn't have. We didn't even know their names yet. All dispatch had given us was a family of 4. I asked the father one question before the medics took them away. I asked if they'd seen a 3rd trail at the fork. He went quiet. For a long time. The blood slowly drained from his face, and I watched him remember, and watched it frighten him, what he was remembering. And then, quietly, so the kids wouldn't hear, he said, yes, they had. The kids had wanted to take it. Because they'd heard a man calling for help from down there. They didn't take it. The mother wouldn't let them. She grabbed both of them by the hand and pulled them away. When I asked why, the father shrugged and said he didn't understand it himself. She couldn't explain it afterward either. She only said that when she looked at that 3rd sign, at the old gray board, something inside her just snapped. Something very old and very deep, older than any words, told her, "Get the children away. Now." She listened. That's why they're alive. I put in my resignation that same week. 12 years in the mountains, and I walked away because of a trail that isn't on any map. The brass decided I'd burned out. Maybe I had. I didn't argue. David stayed on the job. We hardly talk now. We didn't fall out. It's just, after that night, something hung between us that neither of us wants to say out loud. But once, a year later, we ran into each other, had a drink, and he told me one thing that kept me up for a long time afterward. He said that sometimes, as he's falling asleep, he still hears those voices, and that each time they called to him a little more clearly, and a little closer. I still don't know what I believe. I'm a rational man. I tell myself we were exhausted, that in the dark and the fear the brain fills in things that aren't there, that the footprints were a trick of the shadows, and the voices an echo of our own. I tell myself that every time I think about that night. But here's what I know for certain, and it's the one thing I'm asking you to remember. If you ever find yourself high in the mountains, in an old forest, at night, at a fork, the map shows 2 trails. If you stand there in the dark and you count 3, don't listen to whose voice is calling you down the 3rd. Go back the way you came. Count your steps. Don't turn around. And whatever you do, don't follow the voice that knows your name.